This is Solaris Modalis, and we have a special news and commentary today that we're videoing, and we have an interesting story that we've created from the news. So I'd like to introduce Alex Clark, and she is going to start this off because it started when she brought something very interesting to my attention.
Hi, Susan. It's nice to see you again, and so happy to be visiting with you. Susan really helped me to open my eyes to what was happening in the skies, and I happened across an interesting news article on a giant fireball that came in up in Nelson, British Columbia, which is a very, very remote area of British Columbia. And it was interesting because this fireball that came in rattled the area and was seen not only from BC, but from as far away as Alberta and Washington State, Montana, and Idaho. So it was very interesting to me to see the videos that were actually captured on security cameras, because no one was expecting anything on a 10 o'clock at night on a very dark evening. Even though the moon was close to full, it was very low in the sky. So I was reading through some of the comments, which I'll share right now. Let me find one here that was interesting. I was sitting on my porch last night, and it was approximately 10:10 p.m., and I saw a huge glowing fireball streak across the sky in front of me. It was bright orange, yellow, and had a huge long tail. The flash of light it gave off was so intense it lit up the entire neighborhood. Very intense, blinding light. About 3 or 4 minutes later came the loud booms and rumblings, followed by the ground shaking. It shook the houses and rattled the windows. Wish I had gotten a video.
Luckily, some people did get videos.
Yeah. And then one person was actually on a ferry, and he said that it was very interesting because he said that there was a lot of smoke in the air. There's a lot of forest fires up in Canada as well as in the Pacific Northwest. And he said that as they were making landing of the ferry, there was a huge light that lit up the entire lake that they were on, because this is a lake community. And he thought that they were testing the floodlights of the ferry, but that was not the case. Afterwards, he found out about this fireball. Now, when I saw the video, I was a little bit confused because of something that I know as my basis is in biology, that things enter the atmosphere of our beautiful Earth in a certain direction, in a certain hemisphere. I also thought at first that this might be related to the Perseid meteor showers, but when I checked the dates of the peak of these beautiful meteor showers that happen every year, that had happened on August 12th and 11th and 12th, and this was already into September. So I couldn't remember exactly what this specific atmospheric condition was called, but a man did comment on it, and he said that okay, I'll just read his comment. He says that the Coriolis effect is most apparent in the path of an object moving longitudinally. On the Earth, an object that moves along the north-south path or longitudinal line will undergo apparent deflection to the right in the northern hemisphere and apparent deflection to the left in the southern hemisphere. And this did not occur in the video. So there were other
comment by Travis. Was that the comment?
That was the comment by Phil.
Phil, okay.
Okay. So there were other interesting things in the video that brought me to wanting to bring this to Susan's attention and get her hit on it. And so therefore, why don't we go ahead and watch the video now and share it with people?
Well, this is the original source for this particular video, which has one of the best views of this object that comes away from the bright light and the explode. It appears to, the object flashes 3 times and appears to even have an explosion. So let's just look at that. So when we're watching this, I'll repeat it, but look right here, you'll see a set of what seems like at first 4 lights, then 2 lights, then it disappears, and it appears to be going in a loop and a U sort of down and then away from the fireball. Now there's something else interesting. If you look in this frame, this part of the frame here, you'll see there's a blinking light also, which is kind of interesting. Which is right there. So you can go on Twitter and the site and others and take a look at these videos. What we did was we just made some drawings about what might be happening here. So this is a close-up. There you go. You see the lights are at first 4 and then 2.
Now, what I found interesting about this is my understanding of explosions and explosive forces. They follow a certain physical characteristic, which would be anything from the center would be blown out. So it would be in a line from the middle, blown out in a certain scatter pattern. So this object that appeared to be moving independent of this giant flashing light appeared to be moving independently, and that was my first clue that maybe something interesting was happening, and why I decided to bring it to Susan's attention. And this is the story that seems to be happening in front of our very eyes, captured on a tiny little camera, security camera. So the quality of the video is low, but understand that these objects are so bright in the sky, and even though the atmosphere is very smoky, they're pretty darn clear. So that's a significant flash of light to be captured on a low-res camera.
Yeah. Yes, it is. So what we did was we just took a couple stills, or a few stills. Here you can see this object, and it basically has 4 lights. I don't know if I got them yeah, here we go. Here you can see it much more clearly, the 4 lights, and then as it travels in an arc sort of this way, it now appears to have just 2 long lights. And then here, again, now it just appears to have 2 lights. And there's a little bit of, in these, when you pause the video, you can see there's sort of a bar between these 2 lights. And in parts of the video, you'll see there's almost like a triangle shadow in front of them. So what we did was, okay, and that's after. So what I did was I looked at this video and then extrapolated what kind of vehicle could make that pattern of lights. Now, a few fractions of a second or a few seconds after this disappeared, what Alex noticed was this other shape in the video, which almost looks like an airplane. But then if you look at it, it basically has a triangle shape and then sort of these fins in the back. So I thought that was interesting as well. Either it's a second vehicle or it's the same vehicle now in a different position with the top lighted. Or it's a sort of airplane type vehicle with some kind of, for some reason, making a shadow here. So then the other interesting thing towards the end was these spheres that you see that fly through the video. And in fact, it was interesting because you see here are 4 spheres in this circle that make a trapezoid pattern. And then you see these spheres here. They're very, they definitely stand out. These ones are making another geometric pattern. So it was interesting to think about what might be going on here. The other thing was that the all these patterns in the lens, of course, and Alex is an aura reader, so I see different pastel colors in here. But what catches my attention is the geometry of the spheres and the patterns they're making. What catches Alex's attention is she can see these colors much more vividly than I can.
Yeah, and it's what was interesting now, just we need to note that this is post-explosion or post-bright, shiny light. And noticing the spheres, I also can see almost as if there's some sort of pattern or wave pattern that's occurring, and I notice, now this is a black and white camera, okay, and I can see or intuit more colors in it than that. So that was very striking to me to see gold and blues and pinks within that area, almost as if something was occurring energetically post-explosion, and with the positioning of the spheres that are there, almost as if some energy was being contained. So that was an intuitive hit that I got on that.
I agree with what you're saying. For me, what I noticed was, and it's a little bit less clear in this photo, but what I noticed was patterning in the sky, and then these spheres almost, in a way, what they could be doing is creating a net of. In other words, if we're telling a story that this may have been some kind of explosion, then the debris field isn't just physical, it's energetic. And so some kind of a net of capturing energetic debris and even transmuting it with the colors and the coding and the patterns that are emitted into the atmosphere could be what's happening here.
Yeah, no, that very much feels correct to me in this storyline, because you can see in the video, if you go back and watch it again, that the pixelation that occurs in these low-res cameras is very even across the field, and after the explosion, there's almost that entire side in that area becomes very much more patterned, and then it spreads out. And yes, it's only a 5-second video, but you can take your cursor and you can move it frame by frame on that screen, or you can blow it up and take a look at the frame by frame motion, and you could see this obvious energetic pattern occur.
We had a lot of fun doing that, and I think it's important to note that this is an intuitive story. It's based on intuitive feels for what's going on, and based on using our more expanded senses of feeling and seeing and sensing. So back to physicality, what I did was I drew some drawings of what might make that pattern of 4 lights that became 2 lights, and then even smaller 2 lights, and then just completely disappeared.
Yeah.
So,
and it's important to make a note here really quick before you go through this, is that as we look forward, some people have what's called depth of field in their vision, and so their vision has much more 3D aspects to it. Other people see much more flat. So as something shifts in space, if you have that depth of vision, and we can all develop it, it's just something that you either are used to using as a child, but you can develop it. So it's available to all of us, just the brain tends to filter out certain things if it's not needed for use in your daily lives. Photographers use this all the time in the way they photograph images, and they get that depth. So because something shifts and changes in space, and we're interpreting it with our eyes in a certain way, there's not always the ability to understand what's happening in space. So that's what Susan is really, really good at, and what she's going to show us now.
I felt like I was 5. I feel like I'm 5 again, dreaming of different fantastic things in our imagination. But these photos, these pictures that I drew do fit the pattern of the lights. So basically, what it looks like was that there's some kind of craft. It's basically the rear of this craft is facing us in the video. It shows the 4 lights evenly spaced. So this is a craft that has not quite, either square or circular bottom, but with 4 main lights or sources of power.
Yeah, I was thinking of a propulsion. If you look at, space movies, let's put it that way, and you see these glowing, based on jet engine kind of technology. So this is, new level stuff, and it's awesome. New level to us, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, some unknown propulsion. So basically what happens is then as this vehicle turns, now you see it's actually moving in a way that we're not used to seeing a craft move. So it's totally faced with its back towards us, and now it moves sideways and turns. So it's coming down. It's coming down in an arc and moving sideways and turning. And so as it turns, the lights appear to be closer together, and as it basically what it's doing is it's coming down, turning, and flipping. And as it flips, these lights, from our standpoint looking at it, move closer and closer together.
And they also blur together because this is happening at tremendous speed.
Yes, that's right. So they blur together and then eventually look like they're just one light. And then what happens is the craft appears to completely flip to its side, and now what we see is just 2 lights, and in the video there appears to be a triangle shape in front of these lights, a shadow. Now what the craft does then is it proceeds forward at the same time turning and banking to our left. And it's got the right side of the craft raised up, it's banking and turning to the left. It's coming around, curving, turning to the left, and now it completely disappears. Now, as it disappears, first the right light completely disappears, and then the back light slowly disappears. It goes from a full light to about half, and it blinks completely out.
Now, so, this is something I just wanted to point out, that if something was burning, like a firework or an engine, it is not just on and then it's off. There is an afterglow. There is a fading out.
What Alex is talking about is that in the video, what happens is that the lights disappear very suddenly. And when I looked at it, I thought, what if that ship is entering a dimensional envelope, some kind of dimensional envelope where it actually shifts its dimensional state, and as the shift comes over the ship, first one light disappears and then another, or it actually enters another dimensional space, and as it enters, as the first light part of the ship, the first lighted part of the ship enters, you can't see it anymore because it's not in this dimensional space. And then as the second part enters, then it's completely off the map right away. So that's an interesting part of the story and kind of an exciting part. I mean, what if Star Trek is happening right before our very eyes and we are only just starting to realize like what might be possible, what might be happening in our current time.
And that's why observation is key, and it's also key to talk to your friends about cool stuff you see in the sky, and, you know, you can come up with your own stories. Who knows?
That's right. So here's the ship design based upon the movement of the lights. This is the ship design that I came up with. It's pyramidal, and it has 4 lights at the base. So as it turns, it appears to only have 2 lights, and then there's the reflection between these two, because you can see a bar in the video between a bar of light between these two. And then we have that other frame where you just see it almost is like the top of an airplane. Well, if you look at just the top half of this pyramidal shape, it could potentially look like the top of an airplane. And then the bottom triangle of the pyramid is in darkness.
And if you had it slightly tilted away, but the bottom of the ship was tilted backwards, you would only see the glow from the top area, and it would appear like a tail and be lighted. It's also important to note that the atmosphere itself was very cloudy and very filled with smoke, but there was a moon, though it was only at 22 degrees. So the idea that light is shining on from above down onto the top of any possible craft doesn't really fit with the atmospheric and moon positions at that time.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Just saying. So then we have a visual presentation for you, because what I did was I thought it would be kind of fun to make a model of what the ship could look like and then show how it might move.
Now we get into the really fun stuff.
Yeah, this is really fun because this is the seeing in 3D. So here you have the lights. Okay, so here's my EOS ship. So here's my EOS ship. It's got 4 lights. So now what it's doing is it's coming down. It's moving sideways. The back of this ship is towards the viewer, and now it's turning. So it's moving down, now it's turning. As it's turning, the lights appear to be closer together. Now it continues to turn, and as it does so, hold on one sec. So we've got it here, here, here. The lights are close together. Okay, now they're so close that they appear to be one long light, which you can see in the video, that they appear to be a long light. Now the ship continues to turn, and they appear to be just 2 lights. And you have the triangle shadow in front. So then as the ship moves, it goes through the dimensional envelope, this part disappears, and then that part blinks out. So there it is, our model of this pyramid triangle ship. It's pretty cool.
It is very, very cool. Yeah. And there's a lot of buzz on Twitter, so you can check it out there. And what I love about this is just having the opportunity to really discuss our inklings. We see something and it doesn't appear to be quite right, and we might have some idea of the reasons why, and we can either keep that to ourselves or we can share it and find other people who maybe understand a little bit of a wider perspective or understand the science of things, or, you know, like our dear friend at SolarisModalis.com, have a completely different way of looking at the sky and our sun, our star, and has been recording her interactions through photographs for a very long time, and has witnessed some very interesting stuff that can open up your mind to what's possible.
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, you know, it's interesting to me because when we start looking at some of the videos, when we start looking at some of the pictures, when we start looking at some of the atmospheric phenomenon that's happening, and the wonderful thing about the internet and social media is how fast these come out, and then you can go and look frame by frame at 4:44 my time I'm saying this, so you can look frame by frame and see that something interesting is happening. And the other interesting thing is a lot of times if we allow what our eyes are experiencing or what our intuition is telling us, if we allow that to be real unto itself, then suddenly we're in a state of pure observation from a neutral standpoint without any limitations that the mind has put on us through our education, our training, our telling each other of what is possible. Or what is only possible. And when we're observing from that state of neutral, that's when we can bring in our imagination and say, hey, here's an interesting story of what may be going on here. And I think that if we start doing this, you know, as a culture and a society, it could, I mean, imagine how our technology could expand, our experiences could really broaden. Some really fun and exciting things could start to happen.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that whole line of understanding is that doctors and scientists already know that the brain filters a tremendous amount of information out of our sensory inputs. And some of our sensory inputs, we don't even know that we have them yet because there's no way to test them. But it's quite obvious that an elephant can communicate with another elephant at a frequency that is lower than the human ears can hear. That a dolphin is communicating with another dolphin at a frequency that is sonar and far higher. So we already know that there is a wealth of information out there that we cannot at the present time sense. Part of that is because of our limitations in the spectrum and in the decibels that we can hear, in the frequencies that we can hear. But for a very long time, a very large percentage of us have been seeing and feeling things that felt different. And we're here to say there's nothing different. It's all normal. And as we open up to it with the innocent wonder of a child discovering something new, amazing things are unfolding in front of us.
They sure are, and And Alex, me and my EOS pyramid ship have been so happy to have this discussion with you, and it has really been fun. That's the biggest thing, and it's been fun imagining this interesting story.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to more interesting things down the road, and I would love for you guys to check out Solaris Modalis, obviously on YouTube. You can subscribe, and we should be putting up more and more of these interesting stories, and also beautiful photographs and articles at SolarisModalis.com. So thank you so much, Susan, for helping to open my eyes to the wonderful things happening in our skies.
Thanks for sharing with me, Alex. It's one thing to see things, but it's really wonderful to share and to bounce off each other. So if you guys subscribe and like, that would be super amazing. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
You too. Take care.